He has often been called the common sense candidate. David Jolly, the former Republican congressman from Pinellas County, was once considered a rising political star who dared to tell the truth about what was really going on behind the scenes on Capitol Hill, revealing a boiler-like atmosphere where lawmakers spent most of their time dialing for dollars, raising money for their next election. It's a revelation he paid a price for. His party abandoned him, and he ended up losing his seat to Charlie Crist, a Republican turned Democrat. Jolly left politics behind, but now he's leading a new charge to change the entire American political system and give you more choice with your vote. What is your take on the current landscape of politics in America?
I think we're in a very divided state. Everybody knows that. You think of politics today, you feel anxious, angry, perhaps. And look, the two major parties, they thrive and survive off of that division. We know that, and they have for decades, but we're in an era where it's really obvious that the function of today's two major parties is to engage in this political warfare that also divides us culturally.
So let's talk about the Serve America movement.
Right.
What is the Serve America movement, and what are you trying to accomplish there?
The Serve America movement was born out of this frustration that there is a large group of Americans that can't find a home in either political party. And the idea of starting a new minor party, hopefully a major party, history has proven is very difficult. But it is trying to create ballot access in a number of states for independent candidates who are willing to put governing behaviors ahead of ideologies. So if you consider most of us associate our politics with ideology, either out of true conviction or just because we've never thought otherwise. Right? If I ask you about your politics, you say, I'm conservative, I'm moderate, I'm progressive. But I think for a lot of people, what you want is just a government that works, works for the most number of people, solves problems.
So can you give me an example of a problem and a solution that maybe is not articulated in either party for one reason or another, that maybe the Democrats are afraid to talk about, or the Republicans just sort of fall in line with their way of thinking, that the Serve America movement would be better at attacking?
Yeah, so very importantly, at Serve America movement, SAM, the SAM party, we don't actually have a top-down platform, which is also something we do differently. We actually think decisions should be made closest to constituencies. So if you take today's Democratic Party, Republican Party, Libertarian Party, their national committee sets their platform, and then everybody has to adhere to it. Well, that doesn't quite make sense, because the politics in Connecticut around guns are very different than the politics in Texas. So at SAM, we recognize that. On immigration, we need to allow access for those who are here without documentation to some type of permanent status. We also do need to control points of entry. We can talk about both of those things if we shed our partisan labels. On health care, we know we need to make it more accessible and more affordable, but we know in doing so that there are people who will lose their doctors and lose their plans. That's the lesson of Obamacare. Neither party can actually speak to all of those factors because it doesn't serve that very small constituency that the parties are currently set up to represent.
So what are the challenges, or the headwinds for Serve America to break through, to become a legitimate third party? Because, you know, the naysayers are going to say, well, it's all about the money, and it's all who's writing the checks and backing the candidates, and until you get the massive factory up and running to put these candidates in front of a national audience, how do you compete against the two established parties?
You have to have fundamental electoral reform. And I'll give you a good example of what electoral reform can look like. It's in Alaska, where voters just went to the ballot box and passed an initiative that says, we are going to make all candidates run in the same primary, one primary. You can have 5 candidates or 20, you can have 10 Republicans, 10 Democrats, all candidates appear on the same ballot. And every Alaskan, regardless of whether you registered as an RDI or no party, every Alaskan gets to participate in that primary. The top 4 candidates go to November.
That's going to be tougher to do, obviously, in a state like Florida at this point in time.
So I would point to some success. In the last election cycle, a majority of Floridians said they wanted to open primaries. We actually had an open primary amendment on the ballot that got 56 or 57% of the vote. Under state law, it has to be 60%, so it failed. But a majority of Floridians said, we actually want electoral reform.
people are not getting what they want.
They're not.
I mean, and it's not, in business, you get what you want. I mean, I've made the pizza analogy before.
Yeah.
You've got almost unlimited choices. If you want to go out and buy a pizza, I mean, you know, looking on your phone, it's just everywhere. When it comes to politics and choosing who represents you and who accumulates power to make choices on your behalf, it just doesn't seem like the majority of people get what they want. And I would think that a lot of people aren't even aware of some of these things that are happening when it comes to how their vote is being manipulated. They don't even know that. They just, and maybe they don't even have the time to know about it.
Yeah.
They just show up, and when it's time to vote, they're just confronted with their choices.
Yeah.
And the other part of this is it seems like they get distracted on these other issues that really have nothing to do with their well-being.
Right.
I mean, you know, we talk about the economic issues facing Florida, and what got all the attention in Tallahassee this past legislative session? It wasn't their insurance rates.
Right. So what I would say in many ways is, as voters, we are victims of our own trust. We have trusted our elected leaders to represent our best interests, when what they've actually done is choked off the exercise of our independent suffrage, our independent politics, our independent vote. Right? I don't get to participate as a registered independent in who we elevate to the November ballot. If there is an independent today that wants to run, if I want to run for governor today, I'm limited to asking for $3,000 per person. It's a lot of money, right? But I cannot accept $250,000 from a party because there's not one. But if I run as a Republican or a Democrat, I can get $250,000 in party money, unlimited political committee money. And so as voters, we're victims of our own trust because we have trusted our current elected officials to create a fair system, and they haven't. And then secondly, on the issues of the day, they tell us now what the most important issues are. So they will tell us it might be don't say gay bill and critical race theory, when it's actually homeowners insurance.
Right.
The crisis right now is homeowners insurance. Right now.
Right.
But they're not going to talk about that because there is greater electoral reward for fighting a culture war that further divides us. And it only represents probably 25% of voters in the state. But they get away with it because they've also misused our trust by creating a system that keeps them in power.
So what's the good news?
What do we do about it?
Right, what do we do about it?
Look, the good news is, and you know, sometimes in politics you have to wait for a crisis to emerge. And part of what I'm trying to do at the Serve America movement is take some real hard lessons learned within this independent political space to figure out how to elevate electoral competition for all of us.
Where do you see Serve America 5 years from now, 10 years from now?
I think the Serve America movement will have either created or be a part of the creation of a competitive third party in the United States. I really believe that.
Up next on Full Circle Florida, will David Jolly ever return to office? What his future may hold. Welcome back to Full Circle Florida and my sit-down interview with former Congressman David Jolly, who's trying to create a new national party after leaving his own. It's funny because the last person that you ran against, Charlie Crist, had, I guess, a similar journey. He says that the party left him when he went through his own journey. I mean, are there people in both parties, on both sides, whether they are even in office or not, just lifelong Republicans or Democrats that are trying to like figure out where they stand now?
Sure, and I certainly would let Charlie speak for his personal journey, but I think what is different is Charlie did ultimately realize to re-enter public life, he had to become a Democrat. I'm not willing to move all the way over to the Democratic Party because I see so many of the same failure points in the Democratic Party that I see in the Republican Party. They manifest themselves differently. I personally think today's Republican Party really flirts with some anti-democratic themes that should be of great concern to us. But I also know today's Democratic Party crushes independent thought. I think a lot of people say, oh, if you leave the Republican Party, you must become a Democrat. That might be true for electoral survival. And I think for former Governor Crist, now Congressman trying to be governor again, it's true. The most viable way to elected office is through the two major parties. I'm trying to change that.
Could we see you in the future representing a Sam ballot?
We'll see. I get asked, will I run again for office? I'm not done yet. I know I'm not done yet.
Thanks for watching us here on Full Circle Florida. We hope you'll join us again next